Our first topic today, our new business, is to talk about shared repositories and if we want them, how we want to achieve them, specifically, perhaps, for placards, collection spotlights, browse categories, and grouped works. So would y'all find those useful?
Yes, I think so. I think we would.
Also translations.
Yes.
Yes.
That would be really great.
So when we talk about doing that, so the complications I have, like putting a repository up that we could put all of the translation, let's use translations to start with because I think it's the most complex. So we could put a repository up that has all of the translations. The problem in my mind is people have been using the translation functionality to do local English translations. So like simplest example is some people say it's freeze and thaw holds, and some people say suspend and resume or unsuspend.
I mean, one idea would be just to run it across, at the point at which your translation packet is generated, right? So, you would then do some kind of comparison against the code base to get what all the default phrases are. And, if it varies from that, then it gets a flag of this is a local, this is a local variant.
Or would we just be wanting to pull translations and say, hey, here's the 20 new things that have been translated since you last checked for shared translations?
Yeah, I think it's more like a Git workflow like that makes sense to me.
Would y'all have the same or the same thoughts around the other shared repositories, placards?
Yeah, I think that's a good model. Like, contribute your local code to the group and then have the option to pull in whatever anyone else has contributed, something like that. Like, that seems like a good way to do it.
So with something like a placard or a spotlight or a browse category, I think my concern on that would be, do we get too many variations? So like if I create a would lists be a good one as well to say? I know like Arlington has some really cool lists for like read-alikes. Is that something people would want to be able to share as well? Share everything.
Always share everything all the time.
My concern would be if we push that out to 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 different libraries, how many libraries would take that? If you modify it and want to suggest a change, do we have like different derivations of like more books like Harry Potter, and there's then 20 different versions of that?
I kind of see like whatever one was the first one in the door, that's the one I'm likely to download and use. And then if I want to tweak it, modify it from there, I would, but I wouldn't necessarily submit whatever I did back to the repository.
And would you care if the original got updated independently of your changes?
In my case, no, but I realize others would disagree.
Yeah, I think your use case is probably the most similar to how we would probably do it, like just as an example or a template to start with, and then we would make our own local customizations. And I doubt we would be concerned with how it deviated once we brought in a local version of it.
The other thing that I could think of, and I'm not sure how this would work, is if I'm an Aspen library and I happen to be browsing another Aspen library's catalog like Santa Fe, Welcome Santa Fe, and I saw that they did something awesome and I just wanted to borrow that, take that. Maybe there's a way to like let that happen almost without a central repository, but it kind of worked in a way like the Z3950 concept, just an updated version of that. I have no idea how that could work, but
And so I was thinking the same thing, Sam, that if I could have something that would be, that maybe it would look like the translation mode.
One of the things that we've floated around in the past is it was in the context of updating your own browse categories or widgets, but basically to be able to say, instead of creating a whole new search terms and that kind of thing, just update it from a URL so that you could say, I have an existing list widget. I have a new search that I want to do. So maybe I'm doing a search for teen fiction and I want to add some additional subjects or something to it, rather than rebuilding it once it's already created. Just say, here's the URL of my search, plug that in and update my browse category or something. We could potentially do the same kind of thing from a different site.
Is this something that we should like build out the structure where everything's going to live first and then?
Yeah, I think so. We could build out a server that would either have an interface or not. Might just be a database. So
I'd throw all my MARC records in there for anyone to take too.
Universal catalog is a whole different topic. What other concerns would people have with it? For like, do we need to worry about like attribution to say like, hey, here's recommended reading for this title as originally created by Arlington or as originally created by SWAN, or
I think that could confuse our patrons. I think it'd be great if the staff knew where that came from.
No, I think like at least on our implementation of lists, we tend to go with a more like a generic anonymous. I think we just attribute all our lists to a librarian, even though multiple librarians have their own cards that they use to make them. They all use the same kind of generic front name for the public display.
What about like stats or anything? Do we care like if you're going to say, what can I pull out of the repository for cool browse categories or cool lists? Hey, this has been used by 10 different libraries, or this one's only been used by one library. Is that relevant?
Yeah, I think there might be a utility in like the number of clicks.
Yeah, like seeing usage stats on a given list would definitely be useful.
So the next topic, I know at least one person here is very interested in. What does everyone feel about separating grouped works based on the 245 subfield P?
Yeah, basically the situation came from a series of, for us, it was a bunch of knitting DVDs that are all, there's like 25 of them, I want to say, and they're all grouped together. And they all have a different subfield P with some sort of bizarre title, 2500 series, 2000 series. It's not important. But the fact remains that it was, it's hard to navigate. And so the situation isn't necessarily that the solution is to separate them. And this is, I mean, Mark actually brought this up, that the solution might also be to just sort of bring to the fore what you're looking at. I mean, so there's the hold button at the top, where you can place a hold and it's going to fall on one of those items. And so you don't really know what you're going to get if you were to use that. But you also don't have visibility into which volume you're looking at, which part you're looking at. So is the answer to separate, or is the answer to change the interface in some way to show you what you're looking at and making very clear through the hold buttons what will be happening when you use them?
And we wanted to raise it with everybody because it would affect everybody's record. So if you're using the 245p for something else where they would definitely, you would still want them on the same work, then we wouldn't want to break things for other people. And if like essentially treating them as volumes, we could do something like that, where they're either grouped together or like we do with different languages, where it's, you can see here's the Spanish version, here's the English edition. So it's still all the same grouped work, but we show it as different entries. that are all surfaced at the same time. I guess the other thing from a performance standpoint is if all of a sudden we have like 100 different Spider-Man comics all grouped together, like it just takes a long time to display that. So development-wise, it's fastest to go through and make those more visible. We could do that, see what we think, and then if we don't like that, we could separate them out. But I'm also happy to just separate them out too if we don't think it's going to have unintended side effects. And we could also say, everybody do some homework and try to figure out what all you're using your part numbers for, and do it one way. And then if we don't like the way that looks, do it the other way.
Okay, so our next topic, so we wanted to talk to y'all a little bit about the Aspen Weekly. A couple different aspects of this. We're wondering if you like the content we've been pushing out, what you do like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of. And then also we would love to get some community involvement, and maybe every couple ones have a partner, one of y'all, write on topics of your choice about Aspen.
I found it valuable, and I'd be glad to help out.
Yeah, I think they're useful. I mean, some of them I pay attention to when they're topics that I'm interested in, and some of them I've just kind of, let go by the wayside, thinking that if I want to, I can always go back and reference them later. So, but I definitely think it's something worth doing.
I'd like to see is just the cool ways, I'm not always going over to Arlington's site. I'm not always going over to uintah's site, and to have a spotlight on the things that surprise Addie and Emily and Mark when they're like, you did what?
So I think next, Mark's going to talk a little bit about what's coming in 2101.
This is as of today. There's obviously more things coming. The plan is to push this around the 19th, which is next Tuesday. So it would either be Tuesday night or Wednesday evening, most likely, depending on how things go. The kind of main focus for this release is just cleaning out our ticket backlog, more with volume holds, some collection spotlight updates. So for anybody doing the advanced things where we have multiple tabs, those are working now with the new lists, the new collection spotlight style of horizontal carousel, so that you can use them that way. Let's see, volumes, it's doing a little bit more if you have a combination of volumes, of records with volumes and without volumes. Can easily select all titles for renewals so that you can pick selected ones. Lots of little things with Overdrive and Access 360 and Cloud Library. Once we get 2101 done, some of the tentative goals for 2102, looking at some of the grouping and indexing updates. So there's several tickets talking about, hey, we should tweak this grouping thing or tweak this indexing thing. One of the things a lot of people are interested in is more control over like audience facets. So looking at all of those things, as well as some permissioning updates for libraries and locations. And then hopefully start looking at some of the shared repositories to see, at least do some prototyping work. We do have a developer position open. So if you know anybody looking for wanting to do development work on Aspen, we're hiring. That position is up. Kal, do you want to mention the webinar that's coming up too? Sorry.
I completely forgot.
Yeah, so, well, which one? So we have Open Source Live, which is next. I can put the information in. Basically what it is ByWater wanted to put together kind of like a quarterly conversation for all of our different open source products and softwares that we use. But it's going to be our first one. We're going to be talking about kind of like just 2020 libraries in general and challenges they overcame, and then sort of like solutions that maybe they use their software to overcome, or just other in general, just talking with different libraries. We have academic libraries being represented. Sam Passy is going to be speaking about public libraries. We're going to have special libraries there. We have like a law firm who's coming to, someone from a law firm is coming to speak. So we just want to get together and as an open source community kind of, and just talk about different issues as library staff that we were facing last year. That's not going to be the theme for all of them. It's going to change. It just seemed very timely at the beginning of January to kind of like recap and then talk about where we're going in the next year.
And then there's the one with information today, which is more of a, everybody here knows it, but if you want to share it with colleagues, friends, family, that kind of thing.
So we have a few more minutes. I wanted to talk about our action items. We've got some open time, and then this time we have time to talk about what we want to talk about next month. So unless you guys want me to decide for you, we should go ahead and decide what we want to talk about. Is there something that's really burning at someone that we'd love to have the conversation with the community? I know that some of y'all have talked about wanting to see people's special collections, maybe doing like a show and tell, maybe talking about different collection spotlights that we're doing, talking about the new web builder functionality, local history things.
Yeah, I think I offered in a previous session to do a show and tell on the JavaScript snippets, which I've now implemented, so we can do that maybe next time if there's time.
I'd be interested in seeing more in the web builder. We're not making that available to our members yet to maintain our sanity. But yeah, we definitely want to once we get past the initial hump of migrating discovery platforms. So
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that. We haven't made any stabs at that yet, but we're interested.
I mean, I think the issue of linked accounts is worth revisiting, and we touched on this a little bit last week. But it was like kind of reiterated when I was talking to my partner. I was like, hey, I linked our accounts and I can see all of your holds and all of your checkouts when I log in. She's like, really? I didn't know that. And I mean, but then a real life scenario that was like way more toxic was brought up in the last meeting. So I just think, how those work could be built out a little bit more for safety and security. So,
and I think even more broadly, security, patron security, more broadly, and what are the ways that Aspen is already working to protect patron privacy, and what are the places that it needs improvement. And if I don't know, this would be a consortial thing. So I've got another JavaScript snippet that I can share at the same time Jonathan does. Totally different topic, but for consortia that slice and dice their locations differently, a way to quickly say, all right, give me, in my case, give me all the high schools, right? So click on one button, get, the 18 high schools, click on a different button, get the 75 elementary schools together without having to go through .
Okay, so just really quickly, I've got some action items. We're going to start the process, as in ByWater, of a server for the repositories. All of y'all need to talk with your catalogers and think about how separating out the 245p would affect you if we split them out. We are going to add the 245p information to the display to make it more obvious. And then we're going to add the Aspen weekly newsletter and potentially the gathering archives to the Aspen help section. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.
So long.